At this meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners, formal and informal session for April 9th of 2020. And we'll begin with the flag salute. And Ken, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ken. We move on to public comment, and we have a note that I'll read, which is, due to COVID-19 and social distancing requirements, we encourage anyone wishing to submit general public comment or comments on agenda items to do so in written format via information or via email at bocinfo@co.emhill.or.us or by mail at 535 Northeast 5th Street in McMinnville, Oregon 97128. Any comments received prior to the meeting will be shared with the Board of Commissioners and submitted to the record. And what that will allow, what that means when submitted to the record is that ideally they'll be available in the minutes when we have approved the minutes. And to that end, for just a moment, does that sound good, Commissioners? I know that we're in public comment, but I wanted to check. Does including the public comment in the records in the minutes work for you, or do we want to try a different way of doing that?
Mr. Chair, I had that down for a discussion item. I think we need to try to do a different way, because if they're not included in the minutes, so the minutes are approved, that means people who may be watching YouTube or watching us now have no way to see what any of those comments are.
Right.
I would suggest that we actually include those comments as part of the packet. So if we have somebody at home that's watching us, that they have access to see what those public comments are.
Okay, thoughts?
And how does that impact staff being able to do that in a timely fashion? And what is realistic? Would it be, because we're still getting them sometimes in the morning?
Right, that's what I was wondering. Ken and Carrie, actually, thoughts?
I'm trying to think, because I'm wondering if we work with IT and maybe post public comments on the table on the website, or maybe we attach the public comments potentially to the action list would be another option,
right,
for making them available on the website. That may be the easiest way, as far as I'm kind of hesitant to put it attached to the packet, because the packet is predominantly that's draft items or items for your consideration, versus public comment is coming in on agenda items. So I'm thinking one of two things. Either we look at, because I'm looking at the table right now, that maybe we provide a spot for written comments that have been received and provided there, or we can attach it to the action list.
I like that idea, because it's as soon as, you do it as soon as possible after the action list, as soon as possible after the commissioner meeting. And so that would provide that quick without being right up until the last minute, because I want to know public comment right up until the last minute. But I'll get it. So,
right.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, commissioners?
I feel fine. I feel fine if it's a separate item that somebody could call up and look at. That it's probably better than putting and posting with the meeting agenda. Just put it on there so they can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can look at it and do that. And as far as staff time, we'll have to find out. I'm looking at Carrie, because more likely it'll be Carrie in Carolina that'll be doing this. And,
So I guess a question, Carrie or Ken, going up till the ones that come in like the morning of the meeting, I understand not being able to do those. That's not an issue. But up until the day, like on a Wednesday afternoon, if we had everything we had by then, couldn't they just all be scanned as one document, one PDF document?
I think the one caveat that I would put in, because we're at a necessity, we move pretty quickly, and we're using the BOC info for public comment. The one thing I want to be careful with is we get also a lot of, that maybe aren't intended to be added to the record or intended to be submitted to, as public comment,
Yeah.
but more of information or, because anyone can reach out to any commissioner at any point on anything, not necessarily that it would be part of the record.
Mhm.
Well, I think the easiest way then, Ken, is to just give the consensus, just let you and Carrie and IT, if needed, figure out a way to get it.
I'm kind of leaning towards the action list.
Mhm.
That might be the place to put any public comment received would be attached to the action list.
Commissioner Stark, does that sound good? to
Oh, I
you?
was just going to say, can you maybe also let us know how it's impacting you, and maybe we can revisit it if you say, listen, this is just becoming too much, or there's another way to do this, because I know that sometimes if we get a lot of public comment, then that will entail a lot more work. So,
We'll track it we'll track the time that it's taking to get these materials handled and attached. But it'll also be attached to the minutes as well.
okay,
Great.
great, thank you.
Great, thank you. And that's the reason why we had this discussion for the viewing audience is that the public comment, I can go to it if we're done. Okay, great, thank you. The public comment that we received this week, I believe we only received one, and that was two.
Yes.
Do you have I have the one from John Van Dyke. Do you have?
I don't have one from
You
John
just
Van
got it
Dyke.
in your email.
Oh, just now.
We don't have one from John Van Dyke.
It's
Van
from,
Farm?
That's correct, because he only sent it to the three commissioners. He didn't send, but I forwarded on to a couple
Says-
questions in there. I did forward on
Okay.
to Ken and Christian answer, maybe being able to answer something.
but you got it, right?
I got the
On your-
Van Farm one. Is the only
This
one
is,
I saw.
says BOC info Memorial Day weekend boat races.
Oh, I don't know if I saw that.
It just came
And
in.
you
Oh,
also
okay.
received one from Tony Sanzano. Don't know if I said that right.
I didn't get that one. Did
That
just-
one went to all three of you and BOC info on Saturday.
Okay. Well, maybe I can just say the name and subject for the Van Farm one, and then can you read or subject for the Memorial Day one?
I have them both, so
Oh, okay. Well, then go for it.
whatever you
No,
want.
that sounds great. I'll pull up this.
So you want to read, you want them
What I was
read,
gonna say is the subject and the person who submitted it.
and that's it?
That's what I have been doing
Okay.
with that.
So, but this one might require us to make a decision and have some discussion, the Van Farm one.
Yeah, and that's why I sent it to Christian.
So
Ken.
this would be simply entering that public comment
Yeah.
into the record. If there's a issue related to a public comment that one or more of the commissioners would also like to discuss, you could certainly discuss those same issues at a later time in the meeting. I would probably suggest when we get to announcements.
Okay,
And then I was going to raise the question that was asked in there if you
okay.
want, but
So as far as public comment goes, we got one comment from John Van Dyke regarding the trail hearing, which we'll discuss later. And the other one had to do with the Memorial Weekend boat races. This came from Don Schmidt, the race chairman, just saying that regarding the boat races, they want us to know that they have, we have their full support, whatever the decision is, but I don't know that it is a decision that we would make. So as far as whether the races go on, that would be something that I'm guessing is going to happen at a state level.
Yeah, that'd be public.
In terms
gathering-
of
Public gathering thing, I think.
whether or not
I'm happy to note it and we can talk about it during our discussion time or announcements if that.
That's an agenda item number 6.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. I thought, yes.
okay, so
great.
that's all I have.
Okay, wonderful. And then what I see is that we have a public comment that we received on Saturday from Tony Sanzano, who's a member of the Behavioral Health
Yes.
Crisis Assessment Team. And that's with regard to hazard pay and safety of their workforce.
Okay,
And thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, thank you
it
for
seems
that.
so long ago.
it got buried.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all for getting this clarified. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and we have none today. We move on to item E, which is old business, and we have none. We move on to item F, which is other business. And under other business, we have F1 is consideration of approval of the following service element prior authorization, or SEPA, approval units for agreements 157846 between Health and Human Services, Community Developmental Disabilities Program, and the Oregon Department of Human Services. And item, SEPA A is SEPA approval unit number 35610793 for $43,318,408.14. And B, SEPA approval unit number 36281108 for a total of $1 million exactly. And Commissioner.
I was just going to say that these are pass-through funds that we get from DHS for developmental disabilities programs. And what they're asking is that there's designed for specific clients and it will go right to the providers.
Right.
So it's not money that we're directly allocating ourselves.
Yes,
And
thank you.
there is an increase in funding in the first one, as you can see.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
I'll
The
make
first
a-
time I saw these,
I'll
I
make
was
a-
like, really? And then I realized that's what was happening. So,
If there's no more questions,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve F1.
all right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F1. Item F2 is consideration of approval of amendment number 1 to the agreement between Yamhill County and Mira Mediation and Consulting Services, LLC, increasing the not to exceed amount of $8,000, increasing to the not to exceed amount of $8,000, and extending the agreement through September 30th of 2021.
Okay, and these are Medicaid funds that we use for one individual who's enrolled in our system of care, and they will bill us up to $8,000. It might not approach that, but those are the funds designated for this one individual's treatment.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll move that we approve.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F2. Item F3 is consideration of ratifying amendment number 7 to agreement 159833 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority, retroactive to January 21st of 2020 through June 30th of 2020. And Commissioner, thoughts?
Yes, I just want to say that I had asked a little bit about what this could be used for. Could it be used for leave staffing and any staff that had been utilized in either new leave options or reallocated? And no, it has to be, it's related to COVID staffing and their actual assignments, including staff that have been reallocated, but it can't be used for any leave options.
Okay, great. That's really good to know. I mean, even if it's not the best news, it's still really good to know. Thank you for asking. Any thoughts, Commissioner Olson?
No, I read
Okay.
the information in the packet.
And I would guess that you also saw the email from Senator Boquist. Maybe you saw it asking, did you receive this amount of money? And I thought it was great that he sent that, I think, yesterday, and it was on the agenda for today.
Well, we got $112,000 that went to public health.
Yes, exactly. And so I said, well, it's in the agenda. We haven't approved it yet, but probably by tomorrow. So
Okay, thank you.
I really appreciate him being on top of that.
Mhm.
We did already receive part.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I told him that we just hadn't approved it yet, but that it was with us. Yeah, okay. And you, Commissioner Olson, I believe you,
I'll go ahead and make a motion
thank
that
you.
we approve.
item F3.
F3.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F3. Item F4 is consideration of approval of amendment number 5 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Aramark for food services for the Yamhill County Correctional Facility and the Yamhill County Juvenile Detention Center, extending the term of agreement retroactive to July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2022. And Commissioner Olson, do you have anything to add, or I can ask?
No, I guess my only question when I read this was that it seems again, and I'll bring it up again, and I realize we're required to do some things retroactively just because of the way we're flows, but
Yeah.
this is 8 months or 9 months retroactive, and why we're only doing that now when it was actually due July 1st, 2019.
Do you want to have any clarification from staff?
Yes.
So I should check first.
I don't have any information.
Okay.
I can clarify on
So
this.
they were looking at doing an RFP,
I meant
and for a number of different reasons, the RFP has been delayed. And so there was a belief that this contract was going to be replaced by a new one. So that's my understanding of the primary reason why this is coming back now
Mhm.
instead of in July of 19. But it's extending for an additional
3 years.
2 years now with the option for one additional time period, one additional year. And then after that, the plan is again to do an RFP.
Okay.
And the jail has been satisfied with the service and the pricing has remained very good.
That answers my comments.
Does anybody know why, and unless I misread this, the juvenile meals per meal are more? Is it just that we know how kids are picky eaters, or kids like to eat more,
I did notice that too.
or is that just a kind of how it shakes out?
I would have to ask jail staff about that breakdown.
It's not that big of a difference. I was just wondering why
I
it
don't
isn't
know
the
if
same.
meals are slightly different, or if it's the fact that it's a smaller number of meals, or if it's the added,
Sure.
staff time to transport and back and forth.
Mhm.
But I'm sure, I'm happy to follow up.
I can do that. I think you have enough to do these days. I can ask that question. Thank you.
Okay. But you're right that the price goes down by the number that they're serving at one time. So that may be part of it. Okay. Well, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I would move approval of item F4, approval of item 5 to the agreement between Yamhill County and Aramark Food Service.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F4. Item F5 is consideration of the submission of the application for the 2020-2021 Yamhill County Assessment Function Funding Assistance, also known as CAFA, grant application in the amount of $2,591,882. And Commissioner Olson,
Yeah,
do you
this
wanna-
is something we're required to do every year. And so this is for us, the approval to actually submit the actual CAFA grant application. It's nothing new. It's done every year. So
And when they add, because I was looking at that, when the assessor adds all of the different costs and sort of the hard costs in his, is that something that that changes year by year? Is there a fixed amount, or is it based on what our initial outlay
it
is?
said what our initial outlay is, I believe. At least that's what Derek told me. So
That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve item number F5, consideration submission of the application for the 2021 Yamhill County Assessment Function Funding Assessment, or CAFA grant application in the amount of $2,591,882.
All right, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F5. Item F6, we've come to that point, is consideration of approval of the findings and the written decision in support of a mass gathering permit for the 2020 Memorial Weekend boat races at Rogers Landing Park to be held May 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. The applicants are the Newburgh Boat Club / Columbia Outboard Racing Association, as tentatively approved on March 12th of 2020. And commissioners, thoughts? You were starting to talk, and I'm sorry that I cut you off.
That's okay.
But please.
Well, I know that our hands are tied when it comes to state directives, executive orders. We're pretty much beholden to what the governor's office determines. I'm just hoping that we can encourage our governor to allow us to get back to work and for us to get back to life as we know it. This is a big event, and hopefully by May 21st, we'll be able to gather.
Right. Commissioner Olson, do you
No,
have
I
thoughts
think
too?
this is just the approval of it. And like Commissioner Starrett said,
Mhm.
it's up to really the governor of the state whether it's held or not. So,
Okay.
so I'd make a recommendation if you're ready for one.
Maybe before the motion, Christian, but with this permit, because we can approve it now. I'm trying to remember if this permit,
Is it-
if need be, if we can revoke the
That's what I was
permit
wondering.
if the governor's order is not lifted, you know.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we're approving the application and the conditions to the application. There's actually a final approval and issuance of the permit itself that comes from my office after we've confirmed that all of the requirements that are spelled out in this have been satisfied.
Okay.
And to your earlier comment about complying with applicable rules and regulations, Section 14 requires that the applicant comply with any federal, state, or local laws, rules, codes, or regulations. So once we have satisfied that they've met these conditions, for example, we would get copies of their insurance and approval of a traffic control plan from the sheriff. Then typically what we've done is by email, we issued them the final permit. And when that time comes, we can certainly say in there, obviously your ability to have, hold this event or not is going to be determined by whether or not the governor's executive order has been lifted. I think they're likely going to have to make that decision sooner rather than later. If I'm remembering right, I want to say it was somewhere between 30 and 45 days ahead of time that they would need to sort of make a go, no go decision in order to allow
Okay.
folks to start planning and preparation. So we'll certainly continue to be in contact with them and make sure that that's why we wanted it on the agenda for today, so we could have our side of things taken care of. I believe Noelle's already asked them for copies of the insurance, and I think we've got the okay from the sheriff for the traffic plan. So we'll be able to take care of our side here in short order. Again, but it will be sort of dependent on whether or not the limitations on gatherings has been lifted, or if they have enough of a sense of whether or not it's going to be lifted in order for them to make their decisions.
And I would just add that also making sure that we're looping in Jared in parks, because with the parks, county parks currently being closed, this is one of those sites, so any time that Jared's gonna need prep time to get the park ready for reopening as well. I just wanna make sure that that's in that process as well.
Right. It does seem counterintuitive. Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Ken, to approve an application in a park that's currently closed. But I also recognize what both of you commissioners, both of you separately have said, that we are acknowledging that the application is complete and they've checked the boxes, right? And that it will still be up to the state and whether the state restrictions have been lifted or not. So I just want to acknowledge that that sounds really weird, that we're approving something that's going to, in theory, happen in a park that's closed.
We're optimistic.
Yes. Yes, that is a really good way to put it. Okay. Well, thank you. Does anybody, commissioners, do you need more information? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve then, if that's the sense of the board right now.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F6. Item F7 is consideration of approval of the Yamhill County Immediate Relief Grant Program. And commissioners, the information was in your packet. Ken, do you have more?
I was just gonna say, based on the last couple discussions that we've had on this, we have what you have before you is a immediate relief grant program. And we made the modifications where, there's not a loan program added to this. That's for further discussion. This is simply a grant program. And what's been proposed is using a portion of O&C funds. And we constructed this on the max amount that was requested, but recognizing that the board elects to do more or less, that we can make adjustments there. But the program in front of you is based on setting aside $250,000 to help facilitate this grant program.
Yeah. Thoughts, commissioners?
Yes, I
Questions?
wanted to address a couple of different aspects, but I'll wait till we get to there. So if you wanted to just address this part, but I'll wait.
I guess my big comment, especially on the grant program, is my big concern is in the county, we have several businesses that if they can't get, because working with SBA for even a lower in their grant program is terrible.
Yeah.
PPP. But if we don't do something, we're gonna have a lot of businesses in Amwell County, and this would make a big difference too. They don't have a lot of funding from other places, and we will be losing businesses in Amwell County. So I guess that's the only comment I have. I think it's something we need to do.
And I want to echo that. I also want to add that there are a variety of different plans and programs, state, federal, local, where everyone's trying to help out. And I feel like we need to do everything we possibly can to keep our businesses afloat. But we have to remember at the end of the day, this is not sustainable. That any long-term closure of businesses will mean at the end of the day that people's lives, livelihoods, every dime they've had poured into a business can literally, a lot of these businesses simply will not open again.
Right.
And I think we need to remember that I think the punishment needs to fit the crime. If we're looking at numbers, if we're looking at the situation in our county, we need to look at the fact that we're going to have more people who are going to be impacted in a variety of different ways because they've lost everything. So I think in addition to anything we might do with this grant program, we need to be encouraging our governor to be proactive about looking at ways we can reduce the burden on existing businesses with some of the suggestions we've
Sure.
already sent her.
Yeah.
But also to say, we need to get back to work. And that needs to be, at least in my estimation, something that we really focus on. I mean, this is all well and good, but this isn't going to fix the problem. The other thing I wanted to add was that when it comes to the application review committee, I'm always a big believer that people who play the game know what it's like to run a business. So to get somebody on that review committee, I would recommend somebody who is a business owner, perhaps a business that isn't eligible for this type of a grant, someone who's got more employees, someone in the community, who's running a business that's not going to be, obviously no conflict of interest because they're not going to be in the running, but somebody who signs the front of the paycheck and not the back, someone who's built a business, is running a business. I really want to see those people making the decisions. This is not to in any way disparage the folks at Chambers and our SEDCOR folks. They have they have a lot to say about these types of economic development tools. I would just really want to see somebody who's in the trenches make these decisions as well.
So under the current program that's in here, there's an application review committee that's comprised of Abishaw from SEDCOR, Carrie Martin, our grants and special projects manager, and a regional economic development representative that hasn't been identified, but a chamber CEO, executive director of MEDP, or one of those categories. And so I just wanted to put that out. If there's some direction that you wanted to see modified on the committee membership who's doing the application review process, you as the board could do that.
We could do that. Yeah.
And I think the intent behind on how this was set up was to expedite, make the application of making the funds forward. But again, it's up to the board on what you would like to see.
Yeah.
Could I suggest that SEDCOR is sort of the bones of our economic development program? If we have somebody from SEDCOR, we have a business owner, and we have somebody either from MEDP or perhaps both chambers. I don't know, just to try to get as much of a variety in there. And then, as I said, I have a business owner, SEDCOR, and a chamber or MEDP.
I certainly am open to that. I want to recognize that I would like people to be able to move quickly.
Yeah.
Once we have the applications, to move as fast as possible to get checks out to businesses. And granted, one of the one of the concerns that's been expressed in the past is that if you have somebody from one area of the county on a review committee, you may have the concern of emphasizing businesses from that area. But I'm also open to it. I don't think that going from 3 to 4 is going to dramatically slow down the evaluation process. You
Or
know?
even if, let's say you were, and this is done just throwing out an example, if you had
Yeah.
somebody from ADEC and somebody from Megget or Freeland Wade, or let's say whatever company is not going to be eligible for these funds,
Because they're bigger.
right?
I'll go back, and I think Mary makes a very good point, and I think it could be geared up very quickly, is that if we change that, I would like to see both chamber directors on it. MEDP is more concerned with just the McMinnville area. They don't deal with Newburgh, but I think both of the chamber directors and have maybe those two added to it, representing businesses, and then potentially have one or two private businesses that aren't eligible. But I think the easiest way is to get the chambers in actually looking at these also. So I'd recommend we can make that change and probably very quickly.
Can we, sorry, do you have any, okay, my thought was, do we feel comfortable delegating the responsibility for determining those businesses that would be on an evaluation committee to SEDCOR?
I would
Or
think
do you
so.
want, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I mean, they know everybody at this point. So.
Sure.
And we've talked about the chambers, but I'm very confident that SEDCOR would work quickly to get the right people on that committee, so.
Okay.
And do we ever determine how they're getting the word out?
There's a great description in the updated the updated proposal, I guess. In terms of, it's the last section. It's not on marketing. Or sorry, it's not the last section. It's the section before timeline. So it's page 4. And I think also page 2, or sorry, page 1 of the packet. So this talks about the marketing strategy right here.
Yeah, that's good.
And that gave me a lot of assurance that it answered your concerns.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you feel?
Yes,
upon
I
reviewing it?
just really want to make sure we've cast a wide net. That's
Yeah,
all.
and I think the chambers will also do that, and I think once it gets to the media, it gets to the News Register and the Graphic, they will do something on the article. So I think we'll have a pretty good wide net that everybody will find out, especially with that marketing piece.
Yeah. And I had to actually re-look at it, the figure, or sorry, the table, because I wanted to make sure that unincorporated county did also have,
Right.
And it does. There's a number that's been allocated. 18 of the grants have been allocated for unincorporated county. Because people ask me about, how is this going to be allocated? And I thought, wait a minute. So this is nice to see.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you would like to add to the marketing strategy, though? I mean, I'm guessing that Abhishek is watching, so.
Yes, I just am one of those firm believers in sort of beating the bushes for those outlier businesses
Yeah.
that you might not know. It's somebody who's got a small cleaning service or somebody who's got a business and they're not really
Yeah.
in the loop. They're busy running their business. So that's important to me.
And actually, it's on my it's on the top of my to-do list is to send out an email to farmer networks in the county, since they are also eligible for that. Our seed cleaners and our distributors and farmers who do all of the above, because they're busy right now.
Yeah.
So they may not be listening for
Right.
something from an economic
Yeah.
development partnership.
I just emphasize
Yes.
that any communications that we're putting out, we make sure we emphasize, because there is a criteria that's built in here for eligibility for the funds.
Yes.
We didn't necessarily go over those in detail, they're in the packet, but it has to do with the size of the business. It's less than 15 employees. They're under a mandatory change in service or closure. They can verify if they're having an economic loss due to COVID-19. they've exhausted business resources and have pursued reasonable relief efforts. Company has been in business for more than 12 months and is registered with the state of Oregon. National chains are excluded. A business who has been the recipient of an economic development grant in the last 12 months is excluded. Businesses who have recently received a local COVID type relief grant from their city or adjacent county is excluded. And then there's some additional considerations as well. But I just wanted to make sure when we're broadcasting or the releases, and, and maybe Abishak could prepare something that, you know, if you're looking at broadcast out through your networks or your groups, making sure that we have a consistent message on the eligibility.
Yeah, well, I think
Right.
the form, Ken, that you just read, like Casey Fuse talked about broadcasting out
Mhm.
through the farmer
Yeah.
network. If you just attach that, you know, to it,
Yeah.
say, here it is.
Yeah, it says that one of her notes, Abhishek's notes, is there's going to be a turnkey press packet, and so I'll be sure to send that out to folks. That document so that it's easy to read and clear.
Because I have one or two groups I may want to send it out to too, and I think
Yeah.
that's, if we have that packet, it means here's a packet.
And the other thing is to make sure that I know there's going to be a lot of time to vet all of these applications, but to be able to make sure when we talk about redundancy that they haven't been the recipients of a number of things, although everything's taking such a long time to get to us. But so that we don't overload our review committee with applications that are not eligible.
Right. That's a good point. Helping them by meeting the qualifications before you apply, right? Yeah. And along those lines, I need to have the more details, but either of you may know that for folks who are trying to get the Paycheck Protection Program funds, but haven't been able to, there's a separate $10,000 grant. Do you have more information? I just keep hearing references to it, but
Now,
I know
don't,
this is slightly aside, but
yeah, see, and that's the thing is how does this overlap
Right.
with this? So for those who have applied for it,
Mhm.
do we immediately say you're not eligible because we don't know when the funds are coming? This is supposed to basically
Mhm.
cover what they've been paying employees to keep them, to retain them and to bring them back. So that's going to be a one-time allocation for a business owner. But if they haven't received it, do we just disqualify them? I mean, if they've applied and they haven't received it,
well, to clarify, I don't think that that's one of the eligibilities is the federal. Is that correct?
No.
Oh. Sorry, I saw the shaking beard, Commissioner Olson.
I can talk a little bit about what Mary just brought up.
Okay, great.
Yesterday afternoon, Senator Merkley put out a little thing. It's called Demanding More for Oregon Small Businesses. And it says Senator Merkley pressed the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, to immediately fix a number of specific problems that have emerged in its botched implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, designed to help small business stay afloat and keep employees on payroll. Senator Merkley also separately urged Senate leaders to require that the changes be made before any more money on a second program for PPP is allocated. The senator has been alarmed that PPP funding has not been reaching the small Main Street businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, that Congress intended. The full text, and I have the full text. So that's one thing I like to, that's come yesterday from Senator Merkley.
Yeah.
Also, yesterday afternoon, I was on a video conference with there's about 35 people, small businesses, and the two chambers of commerce, and the branch manager for the Key Bank here and the branch manager for US Bank here to talk about the PPP programs and submitting it. And one of the things that Senator Merkley made attention is that the large banks are not right now. They're going through their SBA centers, which like one is in Salt Lake City.
Mhm.
And so even the branch managers didn't have a lot of good information, but both of them did say very out loud, and they were asked on it 3 or 4 times, that their commercial preferred customers are going to get the first priority. And if there was another round of funding, then maybe it would go down to the small business owners. So the banks are actually giving most money to preferred customers. So a lot of the Main Street customers, small ones, aren't going to see that money, and that's one of the things Merkley's trying to get fixed. And so they were on it, and then so that's just a couple things on that. So.
Okay, and then Ken has something to add if you want to hear from him.
The only thing that I would just call out is under the current on how the grant program is drafted, I just wanted two things. It says anyone who has been a recipient or a business who has recently received a local COVID grant.
Right.
So not necessarily if they have an application pending, because I mean, it's with something else, it doesn't automatically exclude you from this grant program.
Right.
It would be the awarding of any funding from another source that would be the limiting factor. And
Right.
and again, the awards that we're talking about here with the total amount that's being set aside, these are $2,500 grants. So looking at 100 grants at $2,500, and then I just wanted to just add those two.
Yeah, thank you.
bits of information.
And then Commissioner Sterry, I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure you got his.
Well, I was on a call recently where they talked about actually having a better chance working with a credit union and a smaller bank than going to the bigger banks.
That is true, and they talked about that. We talked about that yesterday on our call, and there was some disappointment because on this call there were not any of the representatives of the smaller in the area, smaller credit unions and smaller banks such as First Federal, On Point, OSU Credit Union, and all we were getting was the big picture from the big banks. And matter of fact, I can't remember if it was Griffin from U.S. National Bank or Tyler from Key Bank said that their intention is to issue grants, the SBA grants through PPP to the smaller businesses, but they didn't expect that to happen until at least probably July. So it's evident this PPP program is not working the way it was set out to work. So.
But I've also heard that going through a smaller bank or a credit union. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're going to take care
I'll
of
try to
their own,
confirm and get a little bit more information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I feel comfortable with the grant program as written, subject to those modifications about eligible or valuation committee.
Yeah, I do too, because I think Abisha and Carrie did a great job of putting this together, and Ken did a great job of reviewing it. So with a few minor changes, I'm all in favor.
So do we need a motion at this point? Or is that?
Yes.
Okay. So I would move approval of the Yamhill County Immediate Relief Grant Program with the amendments that were made.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F7. Okay, thank you, commissioners.
I just want to recognize Abisha and Carrie for all the great work that they did.
Yes, thank you.
Did all the work on this, so they did a great job.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Abisha. We can almost hear her clapping right now. Or maybe we should clap. She can at least hear us clapping, right? Even if we can't hear her. Okay, thank you for acknowledging that. It was very fast work, and then it was diligent follow-up. So we'll move on to item G, which is public hearings, and we have none. We don't have listed on here an executive session, but I thought we did. Oh.
We noticed the executive session is a separate session.
Okay, perfect. I just don't have it on here. That's all. Sorry. We will move on to item H, which is announcements and commissioners.
I guess most of the things I had on my list, we talked about. The one thing I did talk about, I got a couple emails from people that are fishermen, and they realize that Rogers Landing is closed, as the county park is closed. But they were wondering if there was some way that just the boat ramp and parking area could be fair, because most of the local fishermen in the county, that's where they put in to do their fishing. So
Mhm.
if we don't open it, they have to either go to Salem or they have to go up to Oregon City to launch their boats. So I don't know how we address, if we could address the boat ramp separately and the parking area separately than the complete park itself, so.
I guess I would just kind of recommend for that kind of discussion, because Jared, I think he needs to be involved with the discussion. And also he could also follow up with the Oregon State Marine Board and see what some of the other boat launches are doing. With state parks being closed, a lot of facilities are closed. And anything that's specific to, we recognize this closure has an impact on a lot of recreational sports and activities, and also commercial activities, especially when you're looking over the coast. So I could put this on Jared's radar, and he could be prepared to.
Yeah, I know one of the people that contacted me said they had talked to he said he didn't really see anything wrong with it, but he wasn't the decision maker. So if you could put that on his plate, Ken, or his plate, to take a look at that and see if that can be done. I understand if it can't be done, I understand that too, but a lot of these people are recreating is going out fishing.
Yeah.
And if they can't put their boat in the water any place. So
I mean, the question I have is, it's also a great place to go wakeboarding. It's a great place to put your boat in and go kayaking too. So I would have a hard time saying, oh, it's okay for fishermen, but it's not okay for wakeboarders.
no, I think that would
Oh,
go
you would say for everybody.
Recreational.
Yeah,
Recreational.
recreational for just the parking lot and.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, that doesn't require any breaking of that social distance 6 feet. You drive your boat down. There's only one at a time, or usually there's two at a time. But at this time of year, I don't think we would have to worry about that. But if you're at the grocery store, you're certainly closer than you would be if you were putting your boat in the water.
Right.
So I guess it's not really up to us. Although if it were, that might be kind of nice.
Well, I'd like to add that grocery stores have been considered exempt from the requirement to comply.
Right.
But recreational opportunities are kind of called out in there. But it also calls out that social distancing is required for that. I mean, may I ask you one question? I don't know, because I haven't gone there because the ferry's closed. Is the boat ramp at Wheatland also? Because technically it's a county park.
But that's like a postage stamp
Yeah.
of like a quarter of an acre, which
Right.
is just a concrete ramp on a gravel bar.
Yeah. It's the way we like it.
I don't know if with the ferry operation being closed, if they've gated that to where you don't have access to the.
I don't believe that the gate is on the just the ferry ramp.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've
Okay.
been there. to
I think
actually
it's where
look at that.
on this side, it's where you stop down, before you hit the ramp, where they gate it when it's closed. I believe that does not allow you to get to the river, because it's right up above the ramp. So I don't know for sure.
Okay.
See.
And the other item that I've just put out there is also recognition that while social distancing may be able to be maintained or enforced at the recreation sites, the fact that we have maintenance operations and staffing where we currently are trying to, the work group program's been suspended. A lot of the maintenance crews are supplemented with those workers.
Mhm.
If we start opening certain sites, then that means we have to start expanding those maintenance operations. So there's that maintenance consideration as well. And that's why I want to make sure that Jared has an opportunity to review this, look at it. You can consult with the state marine board. You can also look at the state regulations and the governor's order and do that evaluation and come back and report on this.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's all of what the other things we've talked about already. That's all my comments.
Okay. I was going to ask about the land use hearing thing, but maybe Commissioner, I don't want to steal your thunder. So.
No, I was, Is that something that we're going to have to make a determination about, I would imagine,
Mhm.
which would be part of
I think
an
we get
agenda
to-
item?
I think we can discuss with
It depends on what you mean by
Council.
determination. So what do you mean by determination? In regards to what's been noticed or in regards to some of the questions that have been raised from public comment?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, my question
Go
was
ahead.
just, Mr. Van Dyke asked, I don't think he technically asked it, but it was an implied question of, does a land use hearing that is not open to the public or made available for audio comment, does it qualify as a
So this is
proper
not,
land use
this is
hearing?
not a.
But maybe that wasn't.
This is not a initial land use hearing. This is a remand hearing. So this remand hearing is to specifically address the issues that LUBA raised in its opinion. And so in preparing the applicant's materials, they will address those specific items raised by LUBA. My understanding is that information is going to be made available publicly at least 7 days prior to the date of the hearing, which hopefully will allow sufficient time for anyone who would like to provide written comment on those findings and on that information, time to submit all of that to the planning department so that it can be before the board and be considered by the board at the remand hearing currently scheduled for April 30th. I'm not aware that there is a legal requirement that we receive oral testimony at this hearing. That being said, I will confirm that with Planning Director Friday. And secondly, if the board would like to receive public comment, the board can certainly discuss how we might make that happen. The challenge was, given the current limitations that are in place, it would be a challenge to do that. And you had also mentioned that there was some concern that the hearing was not open to the public. The hearing will be live streamed and available for folks to view, like this hearing is today. And additionally, if you received written testimony before the hearing and decided at the hearing that you didn't have enough, or you would like to allow more time for additional written testimony to be submitted, you could certainly decide at that time whether you wanted to allow for additional written testimony to be submitted. But ideally, the testimony would be specifically directed at the items that are being addressed by the county on remand.
His question,
Yeah, Christian, question is, and it had to do with the date. They recommended, postponing it.
Mhm.
And the date that we chose, are we under any specific date from LUBA when we have to have things back to LUBA?
I would need to confirm with, again, Planning Director Friday to see if there was a end date out there. If there is, I'm not aware that we are in danger of approaching that deadline or possibly needing to extend beyond it at this point.
Okay.
We needed time to prepare the materials that are going to be addressed by this remand hearing. It's anticipated that those materials will be ready for consideration by the board at this hearing on the 30th. So we had a majority of the board who were interested in considering the remand and continuing to move forward with this process. So given that information will be available by April 30th, I believe that's the reason that date was chosen, in order to keep the process moving forward.
Yeah.
Discussion can certainly be had given the current circumstances, the limitations on social gatherings and groups. If the board is interested in talking about a different date or talking about a point in time when additional oral testimony might be possible, I would like to have Planning Director Friday here to talk about that, so that he can answer any other questions that I don't have the information for you for at the moment. This comment came in this morning, and literally haven't had a chance to really think about the issues beyond what I've just discussed with you. And so I'd like to get some additional input from Ken. This may be something that we could further discuss if you wanted to at next week's session, which would still be 2 weeks before the scheduled hearing date.
So this came in last night.
Yeah, I saw it when it was forwarded to me at 9:30.
And he asks that, number one, we read this letter today and that we postpone it. Request that the hearing be postponed until such time as there can be a public hearing. So number one, we have to determine whether or not we could even do that based on any time constraints. And his rationale is the county will undoubtedly have their land use attorney present and planning will have a staff report in person. The other side, quotes, should be afforded the same opportunity. And as far as having this letter read today, I'm going to defer to you, Mr. Chair, because I want to acknowledge that request.
Right. And that's, thank you. I think partly our discussion earlier during the public comment was to determine how quickly we can get this into the record so that it's accessible to other people. Specifically public comment. I, for one, am not comfortable with reading other people's words for them during the public comment period. That's just, people get to say the things that they get to say, both in emails to us and when they come in here in the past. But I don't want to be the one to read the other people's words for them. That's just me. Do you have any thoughts on that,
Well,
Commissioner?
my thought about it is I agree with you, Casey, that I wouldn't want to read other people's thoughts. I don't believe that should be read into the record today. What makes a difference to me is if, and I'd say Christian spoke to this, if we're under a specific deadline that doesn't allow us to postpone it, I want to know that before we even talk about postponing it. Because if we're and the second thing is, the only thing I understand is that if we're going to have our applicant there, which is basically the county, should the opponent's applicant, meaning their attorney, be able to be present? And that's the only thing, that concerns me is we're having since we're our own applicant, our legal counsel is going to be there, but their legal counsel isn't there.
Or someone of their assign.
Yeah, or they're assigned that isn't there.
And I can confirm whether or not that's true, because I'm not certain that the applicant's attorney will be there if
That's what I was
there
gonna ask.
isn't any oral testimony
Yeah.
to be provided. If it's solely based on written testimony, I'm not certain. But again, I would need to confirm with Ken.
And we have to remember that written testimony is based only on those remanded.
Ken Friday.
Yeah.
And
Correct,
I
because,
might
yeah,
add,
our written materials are due a week before the hearing.
that in my conversations, I believe with Christian about this, I'm trying to remember, we were kind of going through what, because I'm still learning how to chair land use hearings. I wanted to go, okay, are we gaveling in, at what point? And we determined together, correct me if I'm wrong, that we aren't going to be gaveling in and gaveling out because this isn't,
It is a public hearing in the sense that we will open and close the hearing.
yeah, but we aren't going to be bringing the applicant up and then applicant up.
We have done that in the
Yeah.
past on some remand hearings, but that's before we had the limitations on gathering,
Okay,
right? So you can have both the applicant and opponents at a remand hearing, which we have done before, and accept additional testimony.
okay,
Given the current limitations on gatherings, it was decided that there would be only written testimony accepted from both parties. So I don't expect that we will be hearing oral testimony from one side and not from the other.
Okay, that's a really good clarification for me.
But I will
Commissioner.
confirm that with Planning Director Friday and report back. I might also say if this is a conversation that we want to continue having, I don't have all the answers for you. I wish I did. If we want, I can see if Ken Friday can join us now, or if we wanted to continue this discussion next week, I could take these questions to him. We can have a discussion and hopefully come back with more complete information for the board at that time.
Because I don't know that it would certainly be in any way breaking any 6-foot distance if we had testimony from one person who leaves the room and then someone comes in and we have testimony. We don't have to have a backlog of people outside, but if we could have a representative from the applicant and from, we're calling them the appellant, so that we do get that representation. I just don't want to be saying, well, we don't want to, we're going to use this as an excuse to exclude that kind of testimony, because it already seems like a foregone conclusion that we've that the fix is in, and I don't want to ever be left with that perspective or that. I want them to have their say if there's a way for us to do that.
And that's why these kinds of conversations are important. If the board feels strongly that additional oral testimony is important for you to be able to make your decisions on the specific issues that are the subject of the remand, then that's an important issue for you to discuss and to give some direction. And I can have a follow-on conversation with Ken, or we can have Ken here next week and we can talk further about that.
Yeah, I guess I go with Mary. My thing about it is, I'm a very big proponent of the trail, is that I believe that somehow, and we're all working through these issues because every government's working through these kind of issues.
Yeah.
Is that we should either be able to have, and if we did that, I'd like to have one representative of that group, whether it be their attorney or whoever, but only have one representative by that group, who I think we can get in here, or we could, if there's some way we can have by video. So,
another thing to consider is if you've received written testimony from both parties and you had additional questions for either of those parties, you could address those questions during the hearing and allow either or both sides to submit additional written testimony to address those specific questions. That would be another way to handle it.
I think for me that's actually an approach that I think I would prefer, because I do find myself at the hearing, as you guys know, as both of you commissioners know, with additional questions. So I would be comfortable with a strategy like that, where we pause, come back to it, get the questions answered.
And all the questions have to be directed just to what was remanded.
I mean, those are the issues that are before the board for reconsideration.
Yeah.
You might get testimony, as we often have in the past, from the public on other issues and other concerns that they have about the trail. But the county's focus in preparing our materials for this hearing is going to be on the issues that were the subject of the remand.
Right.
But you're right. You may get comments from folks for other concerns.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking it seems a bit cumbersome to be doing, well, we'll get the testimony, then we'll come back. And if we have, as Commissioner Olson suggested, somebody who's representing both sides, and we can ask the question then and there, I don't know that I think we might be able to just be a little more expedient.
So the notice was given to hold the hearing in this room. So unlike other trail-related hearings that we've held down at the Civic Center. So size and ability to adequately spread out is possibly a concern in this space.
Yeah.
Not to say that we couldn't look at using a different space, because I think if what I'm hearing you say is we would have possibly the board, and then presumably Ken and myself, Director Friday, some planning staff, some administrative staff. So we'd have to be careful about whether or not we exceed or reach that 10-person limit. And then we would have potential representatives from the county's attorney and representatives of the opposition who their attorney might be there throughout the meeting, and then folks who wanted to provide oral testimony would sort of enter and leave one at a time.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting.
Oh, okay.
I'm suggesting that we take written testimony from those who want to address, because we might, wind up with other questions which are trail related, which are not what we're here to address. So take the written testimony, but do have somebody who can be representing the appellant.
Oh, I
One
see.
person.
Okay.
And I also, I think you alluded to, or you maybe suggested even that having them either call in or video in. I would be comfortable with that. I feel much more familiar with it now, and we have very nice screens here. So even if they're in,
And that would be a technical question. I
Separate
don't know if
rooms.
that's something that we could have ready to roll out and use by that date.
Screens are independent.
I mean, I'm comfortable with two, but I'd tell you personally, I'd rather have just one representative theirs here,
present.
actually in person
I mean,
present.
or if you had both of those representatives on the phone,
Yeah. I mean, on the phone is the next best thing to video.
or if you'd like to have them here, as long as we can manage the size of the group and maintain social distancing, we can explore that option too.
I think just one person here to represent the group, and they can pick out who that one person is gonna be.
Do you think we're going to have enough room though in this space?
Well, one more person,
Well, we're talking about land use.
Right, we would
and
have some reps
planning.
from the planning
Yeah.
department, so right now we are 6.
Yeah.
We could probably, I'd have to talk to Ken to see if he could limit his staff to 1.
Mhm.
And then if we needed any other admin support staff, and then if we had 1 representative from the applicant and 1 from the opponent, that would be 9.
So who would the additional staff be that you would anticipate?
I don't know if we would need any additional staff to facilitate anything related to that meeting beyond what we have now.
Mhm.
Just throwing that out there as a possibility. Okay, so could be as few as 2 more
Yeah.
people, or 3 more people. So
3 more people, right,
3 more
right,
people.
right.
So that
And
would be
have-
9.
Yeah, have Ken and or additional staff by
Be available by
Zoom,
phone.
by
Yeah.
Zoom phone.
Again, I'm hearing we might not be able to do video on these.
So by
meetings.
phone, to ask if somebody has a question?
I think they could do, I think they could do that. I mean,
Do you have thoughts, Ken? Ever?
I'll just talk about the technology for the.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm staying silent on process and things like that because, as the county administrator, the technology pieces, we're currently trying to work and overcome some limitations with the current system to get some things ready for possible budget committee meetings
Mhm.
the week of May 4th, so we may have more information in the coming days.
Closer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I will refrain from making suggestions.
And I would add too, we can certainly, if the decision is to try and facilitate that, make that offer available, but either or both or anyone who we invite in the interest of maintaining social distance may choose to call in. We don't know.
That's
the
a
other
good
thing
point.
I think staff can do, like planning staff, they could always watch the YouTube. And then I don't know who would be, probably not Ken or something, it'd take another administrative person and they can do a chat,
Mhm.
to ask those, or to provide those comments. But,
So if we could facilitate something along those lines, would you still be more interested in a postponement, if a postponement was an option to a point in time when we might be able to go back to a traditional hearing? Or in the interest of keeping this process moving, if we could have a representative from each side there, would you feel comfortable holding this date and continuing to move forward on the schedule that's in the notice?
I think everything I've seen and everything we're doing, I don't personally, I would like to stay with that date and not change that date. It's just how we can make that date work.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So I will also need to confirm that if we are proposing to make changes like that to the meeting, whether or not we have to file
A new
modified
notice.
notice and whether or not we have time to do that. So I want to throw that out there as well. So I'll have to talk to Friday about that.
Yeah, I know AOC, if you haven't seen it, AOC is working on some legislative concepts because of what's happened with all this, of actually making changes to recommending changes to the public meeting laws,
Mhm.
because they were never written to take something like this into consideration. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder even whether along the lines of, reading the names of the people who submitted public comment that we've been doing the last few weeks, I wonder whether some component of our public hearing could include that, just to acknowledge this is a comment from this person that we've received. This is a comment that, because I feel like it's important for us to acknowledge that we've received this comment and that we've read it.
I think it's too easy for comment that is submitted, written comment, to just be perceived that it's not read, it's not acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's just, especially when you get lots of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
would
just
you is that something that you
Yes.
find value in?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, I had a question from Commissioner Kula this
Yes.
morning about whether or not it would be appropriate or possible for any of the board members to read a public comment into the record if they wanted to. And you're certainly free to do that
Right.
if you choose to do that. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that. There seems to be some question about whether or not that's appropriate. It's entirely appropriate. The board can decide how it wants to handle receiving, tracking, reading, or dealing with public comment.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
um,
And that's a good question. It was a good clarification. Last week, I was also asked prior to it that I read all of the public comments into the record, and there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so I chose to acknowledge them by name and subject
Mhm.
rather than reading them in, because I felt like it was not appropriate for me personally to be reading their words.
Mhm.
But that
Yeah, I mean,
was
these
what
are-
led to the question.
these are tricky times, and we're trying to accommodate as much as we can the interest that folks have in commenting, and also allowing the board to receive, hear, and consider them
Yeah.
as much as we would otherwise be able to do in normal circumstances.
Okay, well, I will make a note that I will put that into my script and for the hearing as part of it.
So, and if this, just to sort of recap, if this works, I will confirm whether or not we could ask for a representative from the county and from the opponents to either be at the hearing or be available, not to provide additional testimony, but only to respond to any questions that the commissioners might have about any of the testimony that had been submitted in writing ahead of time by both sides? Or would you be interested in something beyond that from either or both of those individuals?
Well, we're going to have a staff report, right? Is it going to be under some measure
I will
considered a
confirm
staff?
Exactly what we're going to be doing.
Okay. Hey,
Hello,
look
Ken
it.
Friday.
It's
I
Ken
sent
Friday.
emails.
You got the telepathic type.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I sent emails, but I
Welcome.
couldn't get
Thank
anyone's
you.
I might
attention.
need to put my mask on now.
I thought we would be having, I only got a few minutes of the discussion, but my understanding is there's questions about the hearing and how we're going to deal with testimony. And I thought we would be receiving in.
Closer to the mic. I'm not sure you're on
Perfect.
camera, but just want to make sure you're getting heard.
Yes,
Thank
I think.
Ken Friday.
Hey,
Hello.
I thought we would be having this discussion after we had received the comments and see, if either side felt like they needed to have some in-face time. And it's still totally up to the board as to how to deal with this. Since we had done a couple of remands previously where we received just testimony only, I thought this was a safe way to do it. I don't want to, penalize either side or have any sort of perception that we're penalizing any side related to this. So it's still totally up to the board as to if you come to April 30th and you receive testimony and you decide, well, we're going to, things have changed with the pandemic and you want to have a hearing and take testimony from both sides or take testimony from main parties. I think that's totally up to the board to decide whether they want to do something like that. I also think you could see if we could get a larger facility if you want to have more people present. So I think all options are still open. It's just there's not been any sort of change in the timelines, and we've been kind of frustrated in planning with this, that so far we don't have any change in any sort of timeline. And so all I was trying to do is schedule it to kind of get it on the calendar to get it going. But you're not locked into anything, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you have something that you want to do differently and you want to make sure, and I even thought about, well, our office could offer to not speak on this and just provide our recommendation in writing.
Okay.
So that we're not, at the last part of it, making some speech like I'm doing now. So just let us know what you want. We've got it scheduled. It's a remand. I didn't perceive this to be unfair because I thought both sides had quite a few hearings to testify at, but I really want this to be a fair process, and I really want all sides to be able to talk and give their testimony. I thought written testimony was fair, but if the board wants to do something different, you are totally free to do that.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Ken. And thank you for running in here.
So then
You must have been watching TV, huh?
I have, sometimes I'll have it on and you hear your name and you just,
And you heard your name a
yeah.
lot.
And so I was typing into,
Well, I didn't understand when he said he'd contact when Christian said a couple times he'd contact the planning director Friday. Does that mean he'd contact you or he'd contact you tomorrow?
Right.
So several of you had questions. But,
Yeah.
Did they get-
If you didn't get an answer from Ken now, or what he just said, please.
I just wanted to clarify, we are not under any time constraints. So April 30th doesn't have to be the date.
well, we are under the 150 days, but we're the applicant. So
I see.
I've thought about that. So we are and we're not at the same time. We're supposed to, in planning, give the applicant a pretty quick due process. 150 days, isn't quick, but in government terms, it's quick. So, we're trying to provide the process we would for any other application, even though we're the applicant in this case.
So externally from Lou or anything, there's no specific deadlines we're under required.
There is nothing unless the county decides to say that we violated the 150 days. Yeah. So, which I don't think is going to happen.
Okay. It's good to know.
That was great
Other
to know,
questions?
Ken.
So would you be able to, so if we were to just have, let's say, we talked about having one person from each side, if you will, to offer that testimony by phone or answer those questions by phone so that we can have we'll call it a staff report from you and a summation from the opposition and be able to do that without violating any.
What I would suggest then is keep the April 30th deadline and then make a motion at that time to accept, 1 additional weeks of testimony and ask for testimony from both sides and basically continue it for a week. I always expected we would get in testimony and then the board would continue it for a week or 2 or 3 to read through everything. So I don't see that would be, anything wrong to do. And if there's consensus on the part of the board, I can let parties know about that if there was consensus to have one person from each side give testimony.
Does that answer your question? Because I want to make sure, because if I heard you right, they would consider a motion to allow additional testimony for 1 more week. But I think we ought to do that on April 30th. And also you'd be able to see if there are specific objections from both sides about the format that we've set up. Now, again, the previous time we've done this, we didn't get, at least I don't recall, significant objections. The trail, may be different. So we might get objections and maybe they'll ask for something different than that. But
I did not mean to imply that we were taking away any authority on the part of the board to accept additional testimony. It's just, it's a different time right now, and I'm just trying to keep things moving along as I understand I'm supposed to, so.
Right.
Okay.
So your proposal is along the lines of, we are going to accept written testimony. We will, at our April 30th hearing, decide to continue it on, do a continuation to at least the next week to get clarification on points. But that will be just clarification on points rather than
I don't see where
additional
you,
testimony.
if you wanted to receive additional testimony from two sides to limit it to just a primary opponent and primary applicant, I don't see why you can't do that. Yeah, you just have to identify who those people are, and you could have, I suppose you could have objections from people saying that, well, I'm also a primary one.
I know, I was
Yeah,
thinking that.
yeah.
Yeah, that was my one worry.
But if I'm agreeing to Ken, that would be additional written testimony from.
I think it's up to the board whether it's,
Yeah, I think what Commissioner Sterrett and the other board members were asking is having someone, a representative of the applicant and a representative of the opponent, available either in person or by phone to provide oral testimony and or answer questions during the hearing on the 30th about the written testimony that had been received up to that point.
and I was proposing that you discuss on the 30th the way you want to do it, either in the following week or two.
Mhm. I see what you mean, right? And that would likely eliminate the need to re-notify. That was Christian's question.
Yeah.
I didn't know if altering how we might receive testimony would require a change in the notice.
I think if you do it at a board hearing at a date and time certain at the board hearing, I think if you decide you want to get additional testimony, you can do that without having to renotice that, because you're already at a hearing. You've notified everyone that there is a hearing. They have the ability to go to the YouTube channel and see what happened at that hearing.
Right.
So I don't see that you have,
So
Any
if you,
sort of-
so for example, if the board decided they wanted additional testimony on the 30th, and they decided they wanted to hear from a representative of the applicant and a representative of the opponent, that would be set over for a week or 2 weeks. And then at that subsequent hearing, those representatives could be there to
Yeah.
provide the testimony that the board would like to
Okay.
hear or receive. And you could also decide at the hearing on the 30th, if you simply wanted some additional time for more written testimony, could keep the record open for an additional time period to accept only additional written testimony, right? Either of those options are open.
Okay.
Thank you.
That helps me.
Okay, that helps.
Thank you, Director.
Right.
I've been trying
Thanks,
to call
Ken.
you Director so that we're not confused about the Ken and Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
We need to get him a chat feature, clearly. Well, that answered my very short question with a long answer. But Commissioner Sterrett, did you have other things on your announcements and discussion time?
Yesterday, in the endless series of Zoom phone calls and whatever, with SEDCOR, and also a call with White House senior advisors, and President Trump got on the call, which was interesting. Ken and Christian happened to be in my office when I think Christian had already left, but Mr. Huffer was there, and all of a sudden the president was on our conference call. So that was kind of interesting. And just trying to keep everything else going and try to keep all the other, and juggle all the other stuff in the midst of this.
Yeah. Would you be willing to give a little bit of an update? Was it the SEDCOR manufacturers meeting that you listened in, or you joined, or was it a different one?
Yes, it was
Okay.
yesterday.
Because I
SEDCOR.
haven't been able to watch it yet.
And I can't actually speak to anything that's different information than
Okay.
we've been receiving.
Yeah.
Discussions about supply chain, discussions about what, at the end of the call, they were talking about what businesses can do to make sure you've got that 6-foot distance. And they talked about one business owner, what he did with his door and able to keep customers from. So I haven't really heard anything on a number of these calls that is different
Okay.
than the information that's out there.
Sounds good.
It's just different groups of people that haven't gotten to hear it yet.
Totally. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Well, I'm glad thank you for being on it. Great. The one thing that I wanted to bring up was that I had a gentleman from the community ask me about doing, I think, like an official county press conference. And I told him I would bring it up here, but I'm not sure that it gets us more than what we're doing in our circles right now.
This is a gentleman I worked with at Channel 2 who contacted me and said, hey, you guys aren't getting information out, and I think we need to do an actual press conference where you're standing at podiums and you have flags and you have people. I said, well, that's a little problematic because then we'd be getting people together.
Sure.
And I also think that there's a twice weekly call where people are getting together and able to disseminate that information. So from my perspective, it was something that there would have been some cost involved,
Sure.
which I couldn't justify at this point.
Okay.
And I think while he does good work, I was not feeling this was something we needed to do right now.
Okay. Great. I wasn't sure if you
agree.
contacted you
I
guys or not,
agree.
but-
I think what we're this twice a week town hall type things we're doing is good. And every once in a while you'll see somebody dial into it. You don't know who they don't do video, but they'll dial into it just to listen. Don't have the freaking clue. So I just have to assume there's other citizens have got the link from somebody that dialed into it to watch it. So I agree.
Right.
I don't think we want to have any big fancy press conference or.
Okay. I'm comfortable with what we're currently doing, and yet I understand there's there are other public officials doing much more formal things. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I thought about it, and I'm glad that we're getting information out. And I think that your comment about it isn't different information. It just hasn't gotten to that particular group of people yet. Is really relevant in this case. And sometimes it's a matter of explaining the things that aren't actually real information, like the cures for COVID or whatever.
Right.
Right. Or who has to follow social distancing and who doesn't have to, and that kind of thing, which probably was a conversation that you're at the SETCOR thing you're on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I thought I would I told him I'd check in with you all about that. And along those lines, I possibly Representative Bonamici will be on the Tuesday from Colin. And we'll see. That was the plan. So, okay, that's it for me. Before do you have any, Ken, Christian, Carrie?
Well, I would just say, I mean, Ken has been clamoring to have a formal news conference.
Well, he doesn't have anything else to do. I don't know.
I want to acknowledge, I think it's really important that we communicate the correct information to the public. And
Totally.
I check in with Director Manfred to make sure that what I'm saying is what she wants me to say. Because I feel like, I'm like, oh, I know this is right. Oh, well, maybe I should make sure that, and the mental health response, both from people and from the community, like the interview in the paper, I think are good examples of us getting the information out into the community to the people who need it in ways that are very formal. So,
And I'm not meaning to make light of that at all. I
Right.
totally, I think the twice weekly meetings you're having are a great way of getting information out. And you've got way more folks on the call
Right.
that you would like to be able to convene at a single press conference. So
that's a good
seems
point.
like a way to go.
And the joke I understood it to be was mostly about Ken Huffer being.
I know I don't
On
have
the
any
call.
soccer updates because the soccer world is scrambled to stop. So
Okay.
that's all
Well,
I got.
thank you. If there's nothing else, then we will adjourn the formal and informal combined session. Thank you very much. Try not to touch my face now, but
It's impossible.
yes. That's what that's for.